Hey everyone, my name is Asif Ali, and I'm a technical program manager for Oracle for Startups. My role is to help manage and create programs and relationships between various universities and Oracle. We're extremely excited to have partnered with NextGen HQ to launch a business case competition where we're calling on all university students within the US to help create a business plan that uses cloud computing in order for a way to help improve student life on or off campus. These solutions can be anything such as improving education, solving for food insecurity, or improving health and safety. We're extremely excited to see what you all will be able to build. In addition, winners will get the opportunity to view a Golden State Warriors game from the Oracle Suite Box at the Chase Center in San Francisco. On top of that, you'll also have the opportunity to network and pitch your idea to technology executives. At Oracle, this is the first time that we have launched a business competition for university students. And you all are probably wondering why we're doing this. Our goal is simple. It's to empower university students like yourselves from across the globe to become builders and innovators, leveraging the power of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Our goal is to add OCI to every Gen Z developer's toolkit for class projects, capstones, building products, and even creating companies. This will enable the future generation of builders to be well-versed in OCI, be it as our future customers, startup portfolio companies, or employees. With that, we're extremely excited to see what y'all will be able to build and what y'all can create. Thank you.
Howdy, Next Geners. My name is JD Weinstein. I'm based in Austin, Texas, home of the best breakfast tacos in the entire world. And I lead both the Oracle for Startups new on-campus initiative and our venture capital practice, which I'm excited to share more about with y'all today. But before all that, I helped co-create what's called the Longhorn Entrepreneurship Agency at the University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns, now over a decade ago. So this is something near and dear to me. And I wish we had these kinds of opportunities back then, but excited that all of you have them today. As Asif mentioned, really excited to partner with NextGen HQ, an incredible community of the next generation of builders, entrepreneurs, and ambitious leaders. I've known some of the team now for several, 6 or 7 years maybe. Dylan and Justin and Mal, Chris, the whole gang, and continually impressed with the quality of programs and community y'all have built. So we're honored to play a small role in it. By now, you've probably seen a tagline or two of an all expenses paid trip to pitch technology executives your business at the Oracle Suite at an upcoming Warriors game. And how can I get there is probably what you're thinking. And so I'll start by mentioning this is the first of many competitions, hackathons, and other events that we're going to be curating for students across the globe. So keep a close eye and watch out. This is just the beginning. And as Asif mentioned earlier, we're launching our campus initiative to empower university students like y'all to really leverage our technology to change the world for good. In our current startup program right now, Oracle for Startups, we offer mentorship, customer connections, migration assistance, media and PR for case studies, intros to investors, and the list goes on. And so now we're excited to get started inside of universities with some of these competitions and hackathons, capstone projects, and in-classroom curriculum as well. But we're really open for creative ideas. If any of you are interested in getting further involved, definitely please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Asif, who you heard from, or Lourdes as well, who you'll meet a little bit later today. So our purpose today is really to show you the power of the cloud computing revolution and hopefully spark some ideas on what you may be able to build for this case competition. leveraging the cloud to improve student life on or off campus. And before we kick into that, I wanted to give a couple words of advice when you're really digging in to plan on building a disruptive cloud business for this competition. And so the first thing off the bat, I know we have a really large array of students with all different sorts of backgrounds from around the world. And so, the first thing is you don't need to be technical by background or nature to create a successful cloud company. I often hear, JD, I'm not technical. I didn't exceed in mathematics. I didn't get a perfect score on my SAT. I'm not a comp sci major. Maybe this isn't for me. While that's all certainly helpful, it's a myth. And I think understanding a lot of this, that much of your day-to-day activities are powered by cloud computing. So for example, from binge watching Squid Games on Netflix to scoring dates on Tinder or Bumble, whatever y'all are using these days. I feel like I'm dating myself, to using Zoom for hybrid classes or presentations, to effectively tracing COVID cases around the world. There's a good chance that cloud has played a huge role in each of these interactions between you and that technology. And so you do want to understand some of these core components and definitely go layers deeper, which we'll begin to touch on today. The second thing is think big, right? So rather than, oftentimes, I feel like what's taught in a traditional case competition or coming up and devising a business plan is going after competition and figuring out, how am I going to capture a small percentage of this market share that already exists? Well, instead of that, I'd like you to think about creating an entirely new category and predicting the future. Yes, that's right. For a couple examples here, right? Think about an Uber, right? Where, Travis Kalanick had a mindset where, okay, there's a taxi industry, and rather than taking, a little piece of that or figuring out how we're going to operate in that, can we devise an entirely new model where, folks are going to get into cars with strangers and ultimately be okay and hit a click of a button to do that. Similarly is Airbnb, right? Where, could you stay at the time on an air mattress and breakfast? Are people actually going to pay for this? Another cloud computing company I really admire is Octa, for those of you that are unfamiliar with them. And Todd McKinnon is a fantastic CEO. He was the head of engineering at Salesforce, and saw, a lot of customers are having problems using the cloud. Salesforce, one of the cloud first companies in 1999, and he thought, I think cloud computing is going to be big, and I think customers are going to have a lot of problems reconciling all of their cloud apps, multi-factor authentication, all sorts of different things. And I'm already solving some of these technical problems for them today. And I think I'm going to solve a lot more of them in the future. And thus, Octa was born. Which leads me just into the last point, which is, how do you even begin, to start a revolutionary concept in business? So there's a famous venture capitalist, Peter Thiel, that's well known for being, one of the early backers of Facebook. And what I love, he asked one interview question in particular that says, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? And that's a really powerful question. It's also known as taking a contrarian view, right? A popular investment thesis and what many successful hedge fund managers and successful entrepreneurs have followed suit with. But what important truth do very few people agree with you on? A step further, maybe, or just thinking in a simpler matter, if you're having problems of where to begin, is another venture capitalist, Peter Levine from Andreessen Horowitz, shares something where he says, in order to predict the future, go ahead and take something away. Take something away that's very important today and fill it with something else. So rather than thinking in a sequential order, this allows you to think in different dimensions, which in reality is how change in our society looks, right? So if you don't think people will be coming into physical classrooms at universities in the future, how does that gap get filled, right? And let your imagination flow through some of these ideas. So today we're going to talk about the power of cloud. We probably have 15 minutes-ish, give or take, right? You could probably spend 15 months going in depth on this stuff. So take this as a super brief intro and think about how this ties into the business that you and your teams are creating. So let's just start with what is cloud computing. Simply put, cloud computing allows you to rent your IT instead of buying it. So you and I can spin up a business with the same technologies available to massively scaled companies, right? So further, a little bit more in depth, it's the delivery of these computing services, think servers, storage, databases, networking, software, analytics, the list goes on, right? Over the internet or the cloud to offer quicker or faster innovation, flexible resources, and then most importantly, economies of scale. Which means that you're only going to pay for what you use, leading to lower operating costs. You can run your IT more efficiently, and you can scale your business as it shifts or grows. So the shift that originally took place was going from on-premise to cloud computing, right? So let's talk about the core benefits that you have with the cloud, right? So rather than having to build a massive data center with lots of servers, very, very capital intensive, you no longer need to build and manage massively expensive data centers and servers, but could rent the space when you need it. So you could scale as you go. There's no management team that you need, right, to manage any hardware or software in the data center. There's no physical space. You don't need loads of expensive real estate for servers required. Disaster recovery and high availability, all these things come with it. That's a little bit about just what is this thing? So we'll dive into just a very short and sweet history lesson now. Probably mostly kind of to close us out, and we'll take this all the way. In the 1960s, all the elements of the cloud had already been developed in some shape or form, right? So the foundation is from these ideas that are from a long, long time ago. There was a very famous AI researcher who really started a lot of this. His name's John McCarthy, and he invented really turnaround computing as a service. So you have computing as a service, you have virtualization that IBM developed, virtualized operating systems, and meaning multiple users could actually be on the same computer. And then we have networking, where network computers use these TCP/IP protocol, right? Networking together. Then fast forward down to the 90s, we get the World Wide Web, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with out there, right? So the internet's connecting everything. And then we also have a client server model. In the late 90s, a number of these companies that are well-known .coms and leading SaaS businesses today were formed. So one of them that's associated with now our business, Oracle, is a company called Netsuite that Evan Goldberg founded back in 1998, I believe Net Ledger at the time. And that is, think about all the boring stuff, back office, accounting, ERP systems, things that are taking place behind the scenes that all big businesses need. Shortly after that, in 1999, some of you also have probably heard of Salesforce was founded, right? And so Mark Benioff, think about Salesforce is SaaS for customer relationship management. But the big story was in the early 2000s with a company called Amazon.com. So Amazon was breaking out of their book selling business, right? And they launched their affiliates business where third-party vendors could feature, Amazon products along with web infrastructure for other big retail customers, where they helped folks like a Target build online shopping sites on top of their own e-commerce engine. So think about, like, today we have Shopify that probably powers a lot of stores that we all shop at. And, it turned out to be a hell of a lot harder than it was to just build for what they needed themselves, as everyone had, very different requirements. But they continue to build the same building blocks of infrastructure for each customer, taking up lots of capital and lots of time. Ultimately, and eventually they realize that they become really great at running infrastructure services like compute and storage and database, and they had become highly skilled at reliable, scalable, cost-effective, data centers just out of their own need. So this is a good point. Many times businesses begin, you just stumble upon a problem that you're solving for yourself. So it could be that as well. I encourage you all to think big, because I think, it's hard to start from scratch, to go from 0 to 1. But oftentimes you'll stumble upon, when you least expect it, what these large problems are. So for Amazon, then the light bulb turned on, right? Where they could power their own infrastructure, rent space or services to other companies to use, so they're always being utilized, right, to the maximum value. So AWS is born, and the operating system for the internet, which officially launches in 2006. Now we're going to fast forward that all the way to today's world, where we now have a number of cloud companies like Oracle, where I work, and others that have taken those original building blocks and built a next generation cloud. So with new improved infrastructure and a full set of platform capabilities, including tech required to build or extend or connect applications. So the last part that we'll touch on this is, there's generally 3 layers that have to do with cloud computing. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, we have infrastructure as a service, which is called IaaS. We have platform as a service, which is called platform or PaaS. And then we have software as a service, which you're probably all mostly familiar with, or SaaS. So IaaS, think of this as a sequential order of how much of the work in managing that the cloud computing company is taking on. So in IaaS, they're taking on the servers and the storage and the networking. But you want to build your company, you want to build and code everything from scratch. You could just use raw compute. That's IaaS. Platform, you can think databases, so they're kind of halfway there. And then software as a service, we'll think about Dropbox or Zoom, right? Where you're just ready to use, with a click of a button. You log on and it's all there. Operating system, including data, runtime, all that jazz. So now we've got all these services that are incorporating mobile and AI, ML, blockchain, and the list goes on, that are now ingrained in these next generation clouds, meaning you have access to leveraging things like machine learning with a click of a button. And so that's really as speedy of an intro to cloud that I can get to. But with that, you're going to hear next from an incredible founder panel after this that we've been able to work closely with as a part of our Oracle for Startups program that Lourdes and Asif are going to kick off with. So with that, I'll just encourage you all to think big. I wish you luck to build something innovative to transform lives on or off campus, and ultimately the world is what we're looking at. And looking forward to reviewing and seeing a lot of what you come up with. So again, I'm JD at JD Weinstein, at JD_Weinstein if y'all have got any questions or want to reach out. And hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Cheers.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Lourdes Saka. I'm with Oracle for Startups, and I'll be kicking things off as your host before turning it over to Asif Ali, Oracle for Startups Technical Program Manager, who is our moderator and will be leading today's discussion with our panelists. We are really excited to have everyone here today, and we hope each of you is safe and healthy from wherever you're joining us from. In today's panel, we're going to discuss how some startups who form part of the Oracle for Startups program have been able to build a business and at the same time provide a positive social impact in the world. So I want to introduce you to our panel. First off, we have Mina Kordi. Mina is a passionate blockchain enthusiast, female founder with a proven history of working as an international marketing manager in Europe. She's CEO and founder of Tracyfire. Tracyfire is a startup building a traceability solution that enables businesses to have a transparent supply chain process in order to reduce fraud in the food market by using blockchain technology. Next, we have Calvin Yee. Calvin is a co-founder and chief technology officer of Frontlines of Justice. Next, we have John Thomas Royston. John is a co-founder and chief operating officer of Frontlines of Justice. Frontlines of Justice is a centered e-learning company. Then we have Riham Sati. Riham is an international keynote speaker, co-founder of Mayvite, and a business mentor with 2 postgrads in bioengineering and neuroscience. She's CEO and co-founder of Mayvite. Mayvite is a technology company aimed at helping organizations to hire smarter, faster, and fairer while mitigating cognitive and algorithmic biases. Asif, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Lourdes. So, hey everyone, this is Asif Ali again, Technical Program Manager for Oracle for Startups. I'm really excited for today's panel as we have some esteemed guests who not only are going to be teaching us about entrepreneurship, business, social good, but also how to tie social good and business together, and really talking about them and their journeys. To kick things off, I would love to, have each of y'all talk to us about not only about you and your startup, but what is the story behind your startup as well.
Thank you very much, Asif, for the intro and also for having us in this round and in this panel. For us at Tracyfire, we are trying to solve the food fraud, the lack of trust and transparency in trade worldwide and international trade. And by using the innovative technology and connecting the technology to industry. And the reason of why we went to this direction, and we are also focusing in the food market, and the question is why food was very, very related to my background and my family business. We were engaged in food production and logistic, and bringing food from producing in some manufacturers and bringing that to another country, like doing exports. But in this way from providing the raw material and then production and then preparing that for selling, bringing that to the last point of delivery, we had lots of always problems. It was always lack of trust between parties. So there were lots of delay between the process of verifying the documents. Am I trusting to this certificate of product which I'm receiving? This is like in this process, or even if the approving the raw material or what has been claimed in paper documents, and in what they have initially said, this quality of the product. So I should say it was lots of delay, it was lots of doubt, and people, they just in so many cases they wanted to do business because they need to run their business. and they were just risking that all. And that was all the pain we had always in our previous experience, and we even also faced fraud and lost lots of money in that case, but luckily we recovered. And from 2018, when I was in a blockchain conference in Frankfurt, and it was a conference, it was I should say sponsored by Oracle, and at that event I learned about blockchain. I learned how this technology can really revolutionize this segment, this lack of trust, bringing all the parties together, enabling them to have access to documentation in real time, and also this automating all the communication, at least the parts which can be done by machines and by using a new algorithm, rather than sitting having a person there and asking them, let's do the verification. So it was, I should say, a point for me that I say, yeah, there is really, it can be a connection between these two worlds. And we as people, as a young generation in this market, we can make it happen. And it was in that way that we start from our internal, and I should say internal passion which we had to make a good impact in the market, and also with the support of big players in the market such as Oracle, we were able to bring ourselves or our project until the point which we are today, and we can claim that we are shortening your supply chain process. We are helping you to trade with trust with your supply network. So this is a little bit about my background.
The story of MeVita and how it started is a bit of it's a funny story, because I was trying to get a friend a job. So we're in the world of HR, and we provide solutions to try and mitigate biases in the hiring process. And this is when just about to complete my postgrad, a friend of mine was saying, I want to go work at a big tech company. He was a computer scientist, and we kind of looked at the current hiring processes and realized how fragmented it was, and especially when you want to work for big tech organizations, right? It's a competitive process. So I kind of turned around to him and said, why don't we try something different to try and grab these corporates' attentions rather than just filling out a CV and submitting it? And so we spent about a weekend building this app of his CV. It was a bit like just before kind of LinkedIn was going wild. It was just a CV in your pocket. And so he put his details, he built the app, put it on the store that they had, and initially got rejected. The company was like, this app serves no purpose whatsoever. Why do we need this CV? And so we opened it up to everyone to be able to put their details on there. And before we knew it, we had about 50,000 downloads in a couple of weeks. It was climbing about 100 a day, ranked the top app in at the time. Before we know it, we get a phone call from this company like, can you come over? We need to have a chat. And so we went and had a conversation with the organization, and they were like, so how did you manage to capture all this data so quickly? I was like, I have no idea. I was focusing on my research and my studies, didn't even pay attention to it. And that's when we started looking at the world of HR and just how fragmented it was. Companies on one side, recruiters in the others. You've got candidates as well. It's a very convoluted process. And when you start adding in components like human biases and human decision making on top of that, it makes it even trickier. And so that's how the story started. And I got, when I said friends, I got that friend a job. He's now the CTO at MeVita. So I've done my job of getting the job. And the back of that, we've built MeVita. And it's been an amazing journey of being able to help organizations mitigate biases in hiring processes, and it really applies our background and our academia to be able to try and solve this challenge. But it's been an interesting journey, and it's pure serendipity the entire way through.
Thank you for sharing, both of you for sharing that. I'd love JT to add some context and details to the story, but to your point about serendipity, for us at Frontlines of Justice, it really was sort of the same way. About 3 or 4 years ago, I had been working on a different e-learning startup tackling some different issues within different spaces. And sort of our team just happened to meet at the Super Bowl one year, started sharing ideas about our e-learning platform, and JT and Chad, our other co-founders, were talking to me and Ryan about some of the film work that they've been doing, producing Hollywood film, Black Boys, that got picked up by NBC Peacock, and talking about the social justice related issues that they were working on. And so sort of we had those ideas of, okay, you're working in this space and we're working in this space, and we're both focused on justice related issues. How can we combine those efforts and build something great? And so we started Frontlines of Justice right before really the Black Lives Matter movement really happened, and really the world and the country awakened to again to some of these issues that we've been fighting for a long time. And it really is timing and luck in a lot of different ways. From a business perspective, we were able to scale very quickly, and a lot of organizations and educational institutions really were running out of ways to sort of tackle these issues really quickly. And so we were able to go into those spaces and scale, thanks to the help of Oracle, to tens of thousands of users all around the country, and really just grow from there. So we're still growing, we're still figuring it out, but it's been a really interesting journey so far.
Yeah, it definitely has. And Calvin, you really captured that, tremendously. I feel like for me personally, I was a military brat. So I was born in Texas, moved to Germany, moved to Hawaii, and then grew up in Southern California. And, a lot of times throughout my educational career and my upbringing, I was usually the minority or like the only Black student. I went to a very small private school in Santa Barbara, and I think the only other Black students were my two siblings, which were my brother and my sister. And so I feel like there was this element of, looking for mentors and looking for people that could really provide, resources that really allowed me to have a better sense of my identity. And oftentimes those mentors weren't necessarily a mirror of who I was and what it is that I looked like and the color of my skin. And so I felt like, with what we've been able to create with Frontlines of Justice is we've been able to create e-learning modules for contemporary education that does have the ability to have diverse spectrums of people who can be right in the classroom with students and kind of have that and share that and allow them to have pathways that they wouldn't have ordinarily had, or depending on where they're geographically based, they wouldn't have access to. And I feel like that's something we've been able to do both on the film side, both with our documentary that Calvin mentioned, Black Boys, that came out last year, but then also what we've been able to do just with countless schools from Minneapolis, obviously where George Floyd was murdered, and that was something that we spend a lot of time creating a pathway towards healing and what that looks like within that school district, but then also in the New York area, which is more coastal, and dealing with its own ways of how to process things like inclusion, diversity, cultural humility, and things of that nature. So,
wow, that's really amazing. I feel like one thing that I think I picked up on y'all's answers was really, it seems like everyone was kind of experienced this pain or experienced this problem and really, decided to do something about it. Right. And so I'd love for y'all to, to kind of expand on, how does, what does it really take, and what is the process, or what's the journey from, going from an idea to, like a full-fledged business, a full-fledged startup, right? Because I think that's one of the best things about, creating a business is essentially you're solving a problem. And so what does that journey or process look like of taking it from, just an idea on a piece of paper to, being able to hire people, to, being able to create a business around it?
I can tell you a bit about our experience and our journey, because I remember as if it was yesterday. And this is Me Vito was founded in 2014. So yesterday is a bit of a stretch, but it was a really interesting journey. When we kind of researched the HR market and realized how fragmented it was, we realized we wanted to build some solutions around having to do that. And myself and my co-founder at the time, we had kind of complementary skill sets, but we've never of us have dabbled in kind of entrepreneurship per se. And what the first thing we did is we joined an incubator in Oxford where we were. It was called OUI, Oxford University Innovation, because I didn't even know where to begin. That was the honest answer. How do you incorporate a business? How do you sell to clients? All of these skill sets were relatively new to me for someone who came from academia and has been in that world. And so we joined an incubator space to try and gain those skills and that knowledge. And just, it was a huge learning curve for both of us, right? For Vivek, my CTO, and being able to build technology, develop it, and me personally being able to speak to investors, clients, etc., communicating that to people. So so we joined a few incubators and accelerators actually at the very beginning of our journey to be able to develop and hone those skills. And then we got to the point where, okay, we need a bit of funding. And it was when it comes down to funding, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, especially when you speak to investors. It's kind of like saying, tell me about the clients you have. Well, I need the money to be able to get the client. So can you help me with that? Well, come back when you've got the clients. And this chicken and egg situation happened. So we thought, okay, we need to find another way to break that cycle, really. And so for us, because of my kind of academia, I kind of knew how to build. I've done grant applications before. And so we submitted some applications to some funding bodies in the UK, and also kind of government grants. So things like Innovate UK was an example of that. Our office is at the European Space Agency, so that's where we got some funding from there. So we aggregated a wealth of funding from different pots that allowed us to then hire people to build the product, to break the cycle of getting clients to get investors. And that was the only way I could have thought about it in that time frame. And that's how we kind of, in a short cycle of going from idea to building a company. In that time, we kind of incorporated the organization, we built the product, we acquired new clients. But the interesting thing is, the biggest thing is that it's a learning curve for the founders and the people involved in the team, just as it is for building the products itself. If you spoke to me when we started in 2014, I am a completely different person. I was introverted, really quiet, very timid, and now you can't get me to shut up. So it's a quite 180. And so it's been a fabulous experience. And that's kind of how we've gone from idea to startup stage.
Actually, our journey is also a little bit like similar to Riham. Yeah, it was for us. I don't have any technical background, and we started the company initially with my brother, who also is a food technologist. So we were together in our previous family business. In this exporting and production process, we were together. So I'm mostly in a business and marketing side, and he in the technology and food technology part. So we didn't know how to start, and from that point I started reading lots of white papers of different similar application concepts, and I went to different live and also like online and like in place events, and one of them was this blockchain conference in Frankfurt. And there from that point, so for example, really I should say my starting of my communication with Orca was a point that we were able to make all the idea, all the vision, all the wishes we had to have in our process as kind of a reality. Because by Orca we got lots of mentors, we got lots of educational materials and stuff, and so being part of Oracle for Startup program and also joining to other incubation programs, we got also engaged with the market. So as one of my strategies as a marketing person was really going and presenting, getting lots of feedback from audience, either industry expert like in food. At first we didn't know in which segment of this food market we want to go, because the supply chain process of food is really big. So you can't start from any part of that. And I should say then based on this repeatedly being presented in the market, we got in contact with some potential clients who are now also we're building application for them. and yeah, following up was also communicating with investors. And Tracify is built from 2019, so I start all the story from 2018, but then the company officially started on 2019.
Excellent. JT, do you want to tackle this, or you want me to start off?
You can start off. I like backfilling anyway, so.
All right, love it. So I guess for us, from idea to business, our journey has been very much a prototypical, I guess, startup methodology. And what I mean by that is, we started off with a really simple, small, cheap MVP. And, that was really by design. How can we validate our idea really quickly and really get in front of customers? And that's really evolved over the past couple of years, working with different customers, iterating very quickly. JT and Chad, having, and, really all of us on the team having film experience, our content is really a really critical part of our actual product. And so having everyone being able to get out into the field, produce really quickly, build tech really quickly, and really then getting to a point where working with an organization like Oracle, where we can scale massively to big customers instead of jumping right into those deep waters right away, has enabled us to hone in on who we are, who we're going to serve, and then serve all those customers really well. I guess the biggest growing pain for us really was the customer relationship. How do we manage expectations? How do we provide customer service for users in a really scalable fashion? But again, just to recap, it's really just getting out there, and our ability to iterate quickly has been a really critical part of what we've been able to do and create a business, then be able to hire people. So just taking those steps and validating yourself along the way is I guess what I would want to communicate to everyone listening right now.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely on the money. I feel like, in addition to our ability to kind of iterate on MVPs, and there were multiple of them, Calvin was really leading the charge on the majority of those technological builds. And there was a lot of things that failed, but ultimately what we had to do was had to really hone in on, what was the need of our clients that didn't exist at the time. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, similar to Riham, how you kind of mentioned, it's like chicken or egg. It's like, we knew this is something that needed to be in the market, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to exist. And so we had to keep, iterating and positioning until we found the best fit. There was this, even because we're in education, there's this kind of like thought process around, there's not a lot of money in education, but if you take a look at US government spend, you see, over $2 billion in educational spend. So you had to also kind of think through these processes of like, what does this actually mean? Like, what are these legacy infrastructures that are already in place that we need to, rethink and observe more deeply? And I think that it allows us to be both like a student of the game, but also really build a deep empathy for the people that we do seek to serve. And in doing that, we were able to position, a couple of different e-learning products that were effective and adopted. And once again, we're able to have, clients kind of re-up and keep helping us iterate towards better.
It's really amazing. Like, I'm seeing like a few things, right? Like, not only are y'all leaders just like within your own industry, but also kind of like leaders on, taking technology and using it for your specific industry as well, right? And so I think that the next area that I want to explore is kind of why did you all decide to tackle, your specific social issue? And then also, why did y'all also decide to stay in that industry and continue tackling it? Because it's incredibly hard to build a business. But I think also when you're also, trying to build a business and then also solve a social issue, that kind of adds another layer of complexity to it. And it seems like, y'all have just all, went through that process and have just, marched on and not given up. So I'd love to hear about that from y'all.
I'm cool with starting this one. I feel like, and just to reiterate the question, why I specifically decided to kind of work towards solving this issue, and specifically within the social impact space, because it's so tied into my identity. I feel like when it comes to the majority of people of color, like in the United States, the types of opportunities that we get are not oftentimes in alignment with our actual like worth or capabilities, but like the way in which we can kind of position ourselves in, I'm just going to say it, like a more like white supremacist infrastructure. So like, because of that, I feel like if I'm already going to be battling this consistently, like how can I do that on my terms, and how can I make something that I'm proud of that opens the door for other people to come in and kick ass, like frankly. So I think that I was able to really think through, one of the first things that I started with, as I said, was like film was what we kind of where we got our foot in the door. And I feel like what, you know, me and my partners wanted to do was really flood the media landscape with positive imagery around like people of color, and also have like more nuance to characters and lifestyles that we just weren't seeing depicted. And so I think that that's where we began. But then we saw, you know, an opening within the education space of how can we really speak to these like younger individuals who are going to be the next generation with new ideas, with things that we couldn't even dream of, that are going to just like be liberating factors in the way in which we, you know, live our lives 10 years from now. And I felt like if we could take that same kind of, you know, rationale and like, you know, fervor and kind of apply it to the youth, I feel like they'll be able to then be able to use that to like unlock even more doors for like a lot of us who are still kind of like struggling with things like acceptance or where we belong and where we fit. And I think the beautiful thing about, you know, being able to cultivate a business around your identity is that as the business grows, so does your understanding of yourself. And I feel like that's something that I really, you know, need to kind of tip my hat to my partners about, because they've kind of forced me to grow in so many different ways. And because we serve justice impacted individuals throughout everything that we position, I feel like I've also had to have a posture of service as well, just to show up and be successful. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be. And so it's almost like giving yourself this, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. Like, I think many people, I got a degree in marketing, like business marketing. And I think that oftentimes people fall in love with the medium of what it is that they're doing. Meaning, like business is really just a vehicle. Law is just a vehicle, but you have to ask yourself, what is it a vehicle to? So if it's not a vehicle to like self-actualization or the betterment of the society around you, then like, is it something that's truly serving you? And I think that, I'm happy to say that I've been able to create a vehicle that I feel like is in dedication to that type of service.
I was going to say that's such a beautiful kind of way of expressing it. And I think just to kind of add to that from our perspective, our vision at MeVita is to create fairness in the workplace, right? And if we look at, it reminds me of there's a guy called Simon Sinek who built the Golden Circle. You have the what do you do, how you do it, and why do you do it? And if we look at kind of why there is lack of fairness in the workplace, there's a lot of dimensions to it. There's a lot of factors. But one of the main things, it comes down to the human brain, right? It's because of the way our brains process information. That's why we end up having lack of diversity in the workforce and inclusion in the workforce and equality in the workforce. And that's because our brains are processing so much information, and we end up jumping into conclusions and make stereotypes and on the back of that. And you can never remove human biases from the brain. It's impossible. But what can we do to try and mitigate those instead? And for me personally, it was a way to try to give back, to try to solve that challenge of how do we mitigate biases in the human brain to try and increase diversity and inclusion in the workplace, to create fairness in the workplace. And it kind of all links up together. And the approaches that are currently, and this is kind of comes down to when we're doing the research, the current approaches to trying to tackle this problem create awareness, but doesn't solve the problem per se. The current solutions are like unconscious bias training, right? Now, unconscious bias training is a great way to create conversations and create debates and people to discuss. But does it actually remove biases in the brain? No, but is it? And what can we do therefore to try and change that? And so for us, we wanted to try and tackle it through the science and the technology lens that can actually try and generate results and impacts. And that was kind of a core fundamental thing within our organizations. And even our team and everyone we hire in our organization follows that kind of ethos and that belief. we're all working towards the same goal of creating that fairness, or that definition of fairness, of giving everyone an equal chance, right? Because we did this really interesting study where we put recruiters and hiring managers in the situation of tracking their eye movement when they read CVs, just to see where their eyes were looking, and we measured their neural activity at the same time. And we discovered that in 10 seconds, they'll spend some time on someone's name. They'll spend time on someone's school name they've gone to. They'll spend time, if they've got their marital status, they'll look there. And you think, why does my name, right, matter when you're looking at my resume or cover letter, right? You want to know if I can do the job or not, right? And people should be based on, do they have the skills? They have the competencies? Do they have the ability? And do they have the potential to grow? And that should be the factors. My name can come later, right? And so it's really trying about innovating and changing things on its head, and making sure that we can use technology and science to do that, really. Was our goal and kind of mission in the organization.
So lastly, on my side, I try to make it very short. This is about food that we're consuming. So how I'm caring about the food that I'm eating. My family are using that, and we all getting together and consuming this food product because we want to enjoy the time, and also we trust that product in our place. And I see this as as kind of my responsibility, that if I'm by my nature, I'm an entrepreneur, so I always do like to make something new, something unique, and I see that also as an advantage, that I connect that to this industry segment, which include lots of problems. Like there are lots of reports that every one out of 10 Americans got sick because of food, because of food poisoning or anything. And that goes through if we can really work better in this process of supply chain, and bring trust, bring transparency, bring more or give more information to consumers. And also suppliers, that can help, that we reduce this amount of uncertainties, this amount of risk that goes to the really life of people. So this, I just see that as kind of my responsibility, and I really do like to go further in that direction.
I think for me, I'll speak a little bit more at a high level entrepreneurship perspective, but it's definitely a deeply personal issue to me. Given my experiences, given my parents, my family's heritage, in America growing up. So tackling injustice is definitely something that resonates with me. But something that I've spoken about before, timing. Because you can identify a really deep issue, but if the market isn't there, if the sort of zeitgeist and like where society's at isn't quite ready to adopt those solutions, it can be a very challenging space. And even, is your product or technology ready for that? So for us, again, what happened in the past couple of years with the Black Lives Matter movement, and as well as the pandemic, we're speaking on Zoom right now. We're an educational, like, e-learning company. And so with the crossroads of all those different events happening, for me personally, I really identified an opportunity to say, hey, this is a really unique period of time where we can actually deliver a product that can scale and tackle a really important, critical issue, both worldwide, but also, personal to me as well. And so, yeah, that's why I think I believe so strongly in what we do, and believe so strongly in our ability to actually solve those issues at hand. So I think that's a really cool period of time that we're in, and really grateful to be able to tackle these things.
That's really amazing. Thank you all for sharing that. I think I think that the next segment I want to focus in on is really JT. I know you kind of talked about this, right? It's like, how do we essentially, y'all are creating these amazing businesses, right? And people are watching and people are going to follow, right? And JT, you said it's, how can you help kind of the next generation of people who look like yourself, right, to enter through these doors as well. So I'd love, for this next portion for y'all to give, these entrepreneurs who are watching, or future entrepreneurs, or maybe there's someone out there who hasn't even explored entrepreneurship, right? And to give them some advice on, these are students in university, kind of what should they do? Like, where should they start? What advice do you have for them in order to follow in your footsteps of not only being able to create a business, but solving a social issue as well, and creating something just that marries so well together?
Oof, that's a tough one. That's a really good question. I feel like the first thing that comes to mind for me is don't be afraid to fail a lot. I think that, as I was mentioning with, many of my partners, Calvin and the other two associated front lines of justice, we all came to the table previously as entrepreneurs who had other businesses, who had done other things, and like some did different levels of success. But I think that the reason why we were able to come together and make something so beautiful is because we had a posture of, okay, if something's not going to work out, like that just gives us positive information and stimulus to move on to something else, and like, not lose any energy, any fervor, but really take that as like an educational experience. And I think that, oftentimes, within the realm of maybe living in a 9 to 5, you get this structure that's really nice and it's kind of dainty and you kind of know what to expect. But you can kind of get lulled into a little bit of complacency, and so I think that, being an entrepreneur, you don't have that, but you also, you're amongst the elements and you have to embrace those. And so I think that, fear can be your best friend, or it can be like your worst nightmare, depending on how you decide to position it. I remember before we licensed our film to NBC Peacock, before I kind of got into e-learning, I had moved to New York because we had gotten a handful of clients there, and I wanted to be closer to the clients and help nurture those relationships. And it was me. I had two of my contractors who I was living with, and we were all sleeping on like air mattresses. And, I was using my it's New York, so it's really expensive. Now I think it's like the most expensive place to live, like in the United States. And, what we were always thinking was, we'd have 5 days, you can have 5 days within the month of like, being fearful or pitying yourself, you know what I mean? But then you have another 25 days to like go out and figure out how to make rent, you know what I mean? And you have to have like that really kind of like that mentality of like, you can do it. Like, you just have to put yourself in that hot water and like, trust yourself to make the right decisions. And I think that, being able to establish a point of trust within, your, like who you are and what it is you're capable of, like that takes some time. So I'm definitely not saying just go out and like do whatever right away, or, take on, pull a fire festival or something like that. But like, I would say like, when you get to a point of, reassurance, whether it's from mentors, whether it's from the market, or whether it's, in your immediate job, decide to take a risk and do it on yourself, because that's going to be what you can look back on and be very proud of, I would say.
100% on that. There was just something I was going to say about there's no such thing as failing. There's an acronym for FAIL, first attempt in learning. And that's what it is. There's no such thing as failing. You're always learning. The other thing I was going to say is, personally, because I never had experience in kind of running a tech company before. And so I had to surround myself with people who have. And not just having one mentor, but several mentors, right? With different areas of expertise. A mentor in HR, in our case, a mentor in tech, a mentor in kind of marketing, a mentor who's sold businesses before. Because the more you surround yourself with these people, you learn so much, right? The pitfalls, what you've, how do you improve? Where do you go from there? I literally can just call up my mentors at any moment and go, I was thinking this, what do you think? Right? And you'll have, if I just had one mentor, I'd get one answer. I'd be like, okay, that's the right one. But you'll realize that you need different opinions. And being surrounded by people who support and love what you're doing and backing you is the most powerful thing out there, to have that guidance. And it really helped grow my confidence, personally speaking, but also gave me that reassurance, right? That, okay, I'm in the right direction. How do I get new clients? How do I raise investment? How do I make sure we've got good customer success? How do I know that the timing is right? All of these questions, I could have researched, but it's a lot quicker if I had people around me that can support. And so mentors is a very, very powerful thing. And it's hard to get them, but when you can, they can be really, really useful.
Yeah, I highly agree with both of you. And mentors also played a very, very, very important role in creating the whole journey, or helping me or bringing me to the current stage of my entrepreneurial journey that I am now. I also surrounded myself by different mentors, although at first not all of them are very happy because it's just an extra work for them, but there are so many good people outside. Then they see you're a deducted person, you really you're a consistent person, you want to go further, you're serious about your decision, and you're doing your homework very well. And then they really will support you. So mentors, good team, also finding other passionate co-founders is really helpful, so they can cover the parts which you don't have it in your skill. Really, I should say, before all of them is you need to first of all think about your passion, about what you like, about where is your focus. So if you can focus on the topic after your school, after your full-time job, it means this topic is very important and it matters to you. So find your passion, find good mentors, good team, and just go further. Don't give up. So life is not always easy, and all of us have really lots of struggle in our journey, but we are just a little bit tricky ones, I should say. We don't care about all these struggles, and trying to focus on our vision and goal in the future.
I loved hearing all these answers, because I think something that I've learned over these years is, being an entrepreneur, being in business, there's a lot of similar threads, and there's a lot of things that all of you are talking about that really resonate with me. Sacrifice, passion, having consistency. This is a long-term game. But if you really do find your passion, you're going to be willing to, put your life's work into this, because it's that sort of self-actualization that JT talked about, and all these, just hear it in all of your answers here. But, I think, something that I've really come to respect and cherish with this particular company in Frontlines of Justice is our team. And JT and I talk about this a lot. It's that community around you, being able, you're going to spend a lot of time with the people that you work with, and having, the empathy and the sort of emotional intelligence and maturity to tackle these challenging issues really makes the work worth it, makes it fun, and makes you succeed. The myth of a solo entrepreneur that goes out there and just creates something and, creates Apple, like that doesn't exist. Of course, it takes prolific people and people who, really talented at what you do. But, I can't say it enough. Like I'm 10 plus years into my entrepreneurial career, and man, I've had some really bad teams. I've had some really great teams, but you really, this is your life's work. This is your friends, and this is your family. So I really hope you enjoy what you do. And I think that's, it's going to make the work a lot easier to spend those 100+ hours a week when you're working on those things.
That was really amazing. I love, how it's just like all of your answers were just so, incorporated human, right? And like, it was just, filled with a lot of empathy, and a lot of, things that people can really act on, right? And I feel like we can, talk about just so many more things with all of y'all for like the next hour or so, but I know we are on a time limit. Unfortunately, that's all we have for today. But I wanted to, to thank you all, to our panelists for thank you so much for, taking out some time and talking to us about just not only business, how do you make a social impact in this world, right? As we see so many social issues rising. And thank you for giving us the cheat codes and a guide on how to solve these social issues while also creating a business. And then lastly, to the university students, I hope this session was, extremely helpful for you all. I hope you're able to learn from Mina, from Riham, from Calvin, and from John Thomas on, how to create a business for the future, and also how you're able to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. So thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate your time.